everyone, I'm Frank Malakote. I'm a reporter anchor for KTVU Fox 2 here in the San Francisco Bay Area. My guest is a psychologist out of Pennsylvania. She also just wrote a book that's coming out in a couple of weeks called Logged In, Stressed Out, How Social Media is Affecting Our Mental Health. And she's here to talk about social media and what it's doing to our world, especially during the pandemic. Let's say hi to the good doctor. That's Paula Durlofsky. Paula, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here too.
All right. Well, let's dive in about screen time because I just saw a recent study that said Americans are averaging close to 10 hours a day doing this, and that can't be super healthy, right?
It isn't. You are exactly right. Spending hours and hours scrolling through social media is not going to make anybody feel better. And it certainly really robs us of so much time that we can't get back. So it's really important to be mindful of taking ownership of your social media use and consumption.
Well, I think we should. It's not easy to do, but talk about how social media is it can change your personality, your behavior for the day, your attitude. Like you said, you could scroll through, Facebook or Twitter or whatever and go from highs and lows. It really does affect us.
Yeah, and it can, like, you had just said, it can really set your mood and it can set your mood for the day. Look, research is now showing, and this is really important for people to know, that passively scrolling through social media ends up with people feeling worse. They are more depressed, they are more anxious than they had been moments before they had logged on. But on the other hand, research shows that actively participating on social media by actually, with intention, trying to foster conversations with our virtual friends makes us feel better. It leads to more connection. So
What
the ways in which we use it can determine how we're going to feel.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'd asked you this off camera before, but it made me wonder, 15 years ago, what we did with all our time. I mean, if you're spending 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day on your phone or your computer, I mean, how much more productive were you, in 2002 when we didn't have these things?
That is a really good question. And I would imagine with television, maybe people were spending hours and hours of their day watching TV or doing, other things that are unhealthy. Look, there is no doubt that social media has the potential for us to use it in unhealthy ways, to avoid problems in our relationships or an interpersonal problem, in many of the same ways that people use alcohol or food to self medicate.
So it's a bit of a crutch.
Well, it becomes used. I'm not sure that I would say that it's a crutch, but that it becomes an unhealthy coping mechanism. And the other thing that it stopped, you had mentioned, well, what were we doing 10 or 20 years ago? A lot of, and particularly with young children, is, the idea of daydreaming and of just kind of having time to yourself in your bedroom, drawing, reading, and, really spending time to pursue the arts. That really, you don't hear that as much. So I kind of wonder what is happening to our degree of creativity in that way.
How about boundaries? How do we set them if you're a parent or if you're an adult and you got issues?
Yeah. Well, setting boundaries is a very important thing to do with our social media use. And it sounds easy, but it's really hard to do. And one way that people can be more successful with setting boundaries is to ask themselves why. Why do I want to set a boundary around my social media use? Is it because I am spending hours and hours losing time? Is it because my relationship is suffering? Is it because my job is in jeopardy? Is it because it's making me feel more depressed? So, when we have a really good idea as to why we need to set a boundary, we're more likely to do it. One very obvious boundary is to put your phone away, in a place where you can't see it or you can't easily get to it, and that could be in a separate room. And something that would require, that I hear a lot in my practice, is, wow, when I'm not with my phone, I get really nervous, I get afraid, I get very anxious. So learning how to deal with the frustration of not being with your phone is also key to setting successful boundaries. Yeah, emotions are cycles. They have a beginning, they have a middle, they have an end. That is the same with our phone too. When we're feeling anxious, we're not going to, if we ride that wave, feel it forever. But we do have to learn how to work through it in order to get to a life where we're not attached to our screens for 10 hours a day and we can pursue other activities
Why
and relationships.
why are they so addictive? I mean, to the point where you're in your car and you hear ding and you're like, I don't care, I might get in a wreck, but I got to see who just called me. I mean, why are we that way?
It taps into our natural drive to be curious. And, it's my understanding that social media platforms, they are, engineered to have the user spend as much time as possible on the site. So we are the consumers, our time is the product.
Can we
That's
learn? Can we benefit from social media a little bit?
Absolutely. Social media is not in and of itself a bad thing. It taps into our primal drive to connect, and relationships are healthy. It's a healthy thing to want to connect. Um, like one very important human pursuit is to be loved and to know how to love. Um, so, we can certainly, I think, learn how we, let me rephrase that, a way in which, well, what we can learn from social media is how to use it in ways that we can connect, uh, where it's helpful, where it's healthy. And when do we cross that line? And do we also notice that we cross that line in our real lives too, or in real time?
Where does it play a role in people becoming depressed or anxious or maybe turning to drugs or alcohol? What does it have that effect on some people?
Well, like I was saying, that the research shows that if you're just passively consuming social media, more likely you're going to end up in a place where you're going to feel worse than you had before you logged on. And there's also what is commonly known as the compare and despair syndrome. Um, it's human nature to compare ourselves to other people, and that in and of itself is not a bad thing. It can be very helpful for us to achieve goals. But what is interesting is with social media, people tend to compare upward. So they do what's called an upward comparison. And in their mind, they are comparing themselves to somebody that they feel is superior to them. So if you are somebody that is more vulnerable to, feeling not so great about yourself in general, or maybe at the moment you're going through a really tough time and you're going to be more vulnerable to compare yourselves to compare yourself to someone whose life is at the moment more settled. It's probably a good idea to skip social media. And the other thing is that research does show that social media stirs up feelings of envy. Envy is a normal and human feeling, but some people feel it more deeply and it lingers for longer and it really negatively affects their sense of themselves and the way they feel about their life. So, if that's something you find that you really struggle with, it's really important to be very intentional with your social media use.
Is there a cure-all? Is there a balance that we can find? What do you, I know you've touched on some, but what are your tips?
I think one way to get to a balance is to really start with your relationships and how you feel offline. Really take some time to reflect about yourself and your relationships and consider that if you're in a if you're not in a great place offline, there's a good chance that that's going to be repeated online.
Good advice. Tell us about your book. I know it comes out, December 21st?
Yes. And it really is my book. What I am hoping that readers will take away from it is to, number one, prioritize their their offline relationships. That's really key and crucial to our mental health and to our well-being. And to learn how to use social media in skillful ways that enhance our relationships offline.
Now, did you write the book because you needed a little help social media wise yourself, or is it from a conglomeration of all your clients and patients that come in that need a little help?
It is a little bit of both, I have to say. I joined Facebook in 2009 and I was like immediately hooked. It was really great that I was able to connect with friends that I hadn't seen in decades, and I had enjoyed it. But I did begin to find that I was on it for too long and for not always the right reasons. And I was also hearing in my practice people talk about how their social media use was negatively affecting their relationships, their ability to move forward in their life, to move forward in their careers, and was really, they had negative lingering feelings from logging in that would stay with them for extended periods of time.
Yeah. Tell us the name of the book and where people can get it, Paula.
The name of the book is called Logged In and Stressed Out: How Social Media is Affecting Your Mental Health and What You Can Do About It. You can find the book at Barnes and Nobles or Amazon, any online bookstore.
And it's out just in time for the holidays. The
Yes,
perfect gift. All right, doctor. Paula, I want to thank you very much. That's Paula Dorlovsky. She is a psychiatrist out of Pennsylvania, also an author. You just heard about the book. Thank you very much, doctor, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. I'm Frank Malicote. If you'd like more information as well, you can go to newsnowfox.com. Have a good day, everybody.